Here instead. Admire your life choices.
They make good ones, don't they?
Right. At least today they did.
Absolutely. It's really exciting. How many for you, this is your first time here at the store? So we do this almost daily, which is pretty cool. We do about 350 events a year, almost a event a day, either virtually or online. You can always catch us on YouTube, Facebook, and then the day after, Spotify and Apple. We post these programs in the audio format for a podcast, which is really a lot of fun. So you can do it. You can relax if you're not sure that you want to drive all the way down to Scottsdale. It might be a long drive for you, or you may live somewhere else. And we have people from all over the world who jump in and watch us. We have one gal from Italy who watches in the middle of the night while she's doing her lab assays for Italian hospital, and she'll ask questions about various crime writers. So it's really neat. We've got kind of this international group that actually watches us as well. So we get some really cool questions and all of that. And of course, we ship all over the world. So if there's your favorite authors coming and you happen to be living somewhere else, we can get it signed, most likely personalized if they're physically coming here, and send it off to you. So that's always makes a great gift too. Somebody's favorite writer is coming in. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. Miles, I know you've been a long-time customer. You've been with us since the beginning.
Yeah. It's been a fun journey. Glad to be back.
When was the beginning?
1989.
Oh, wow.
Our store owner opened the store as her 50th birthday present to herself.
Wow.
She's now 84, and she's still just incredibly active, and I hope to be that way when I'm 84. I'm just saying.
I hope to be 84.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right. So, John, how was the flight over here, and has it been crazy, or have you been crazy busy? You were talking about.
Yes, it's been crazy busy. I'm here for covering spring training. Not just this. This was just fortuitous timing, and we also are about to put our top 30 prospect lists out. I do minor league prospect for MLB.com, and so I've got 10 more reports to write after this. So it's kind of been like run to the ballpark, do my things, go back and stick my head in my laptop for 15 hours.
Exactly.
Not really Shangri-La spring that you think, but the light is at the end of the tunnel, so I should be done with that soon, and I can actually enjoy. It's nice watching live baseball again, though. There's always that window of time where there isn't anything going on. If you live here, you're not used to that, but where I come from, we get snow and rain and stuff, and so you can't play year-round. And just remember how be grateful.
And where you come from, you have one of the most beautiful ballparks in the nation.
This is true. For my money, I mean, I'm biased. I live in Pittsburgh, and PNC Park, for my money, is still is the best ballpark. San Francisco's pretty good, but yeah. So. But I'm here through March 9th, so I'll get to run around and enjoy once the.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah, we'll get a rainy day here or there, maybe, but it's gorgeous.
Yeah. I'm here twice a year usually for spring training in the Arizona Fall League, and in the fall it'll rain once.
Yeah.
Every 3 years.
Well, and for those of you who are sitting in the back row or standing, feel free to grab a comfy chair. The big chair right there is open, and it's incredibly comfortable. So.
Well, I want to sit there.
I know, exactly. I'm just going to warn you, you may fall asleep. It's a danger.
You've heard me talk before then. Is everyone here like natives from here, or are there people who are visiting for spring training?
Visiting.
Oh, so mostly visiting.
Michigan.
Michigan.
Minnesota.
Snowbird, Ohio.
Well, I saw the old school. Oh, wow. All right.
All right.
It's
Live here.
Okay. You're an outlier, evidently.
So for those of us who are native, we just blame the snowbirds for the increase in traffic and
And for the local economy. It's a
local
trade-off, really.
It really is. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, John.
I mean, you came here to buy a book, I hope, so I got to be nice to you.
All right, just starting. We'll start in just a few minutes here. So yeah, so it's been a gorgeous day out. How many of you are going to be going to a baseball game this weekend? Anybody else? Yeah, yeah. It's so perfect to do it. Yeah. All right. Let me see if I can. There are a couple seats left, I know, but let me go ahead.
John, I'll bet you enjoyed working with Dave Dombrowski, didn't you?
I've never really. Oh, I mean, he wrote the foreword. I mean, I've known Dave for how long I've been doing this. I mean, he's probably one of the first contacts I ever made, and so 25 years, something like that.
Would you agree with me? He's a great guy.
Yes. And he's good at what he does. I mean, he's winning titles. It's hard to argue with that. Were you sad to see him leave Detroit?
Oh, yeah.
I'm assuming you're a Tigers fan.
Yeah, and he wrote the foreword to one of my Tiger histories.
Ah.
All right, we're good to go. All right. All right. As soon as we're live. We got you live? All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another Poison Pen event here in beautiful Scottsdale, Arizona. Hopefully, we've been having some sound issues this afternoon. So hopefully, for those of you who are online, you can hear us. If not, we are recording this as we speak. So in case we need to bump up the volume, we will be after we'll be posting this. So anyways, welcome. For those of you who are watching online, and for those of you who are local, we are very honored to have one of our biggest writers in MLB history, Jonathan Mayo, writer for MLB.com. He's also a former scout and a journalist. Jonathan, welcome.
Thank you. I'm only like 6'1". I don't know that I'm the biggest writer you've ever had.
One of the tallest. Anybody's taller than me.
All right, fair enough. Fair enough.
Well, so congratulations on the book.
Thank you.
For the audience here at home, in a little bit, what was it that your new book, Smart, Wrong, and Lucky? What was the inspiration behind writing this new book?
I spend, I would say, maybe 80% of my time talking to scouts and people in baseball and front offices. And not only do I firmly believe that they're the lifeblood of baseball, but they're also the best storytellers. And they all just have incredible stories. And anytime you're talking to them, even about current players, eventually you'll start talking about things that had happened in the past. And they typically like to talk, they're a self-deprecating bunch, about players they missed on. Like, oh, I should have drafted this guy. And he went on to be a Hall of Famer, an All-Star, or an MVP, or things like that. Or I did draft this guy, and he never made it. And those stories fascinate me. But I also know enough about marketing that to have a book of pictures of people that you've never heard of is not going to do so well. So this sort of came about. I was doing a story on Charlie Blackmon, who's in the book, for MLB.com, my day-to-day employer, sort of on how he was scouted and discovered. And I kind of realized that there are hundreds of stories like that, because for every guy who is the number one pick in the draft, you know he's going to be a superstar who makes it, there are guys who no one really believed in except for maybe one team or one scout. And I decided that I would, start with this collection of it. And I could very easily rinse and repeat and do this over and over again, because there are so many stories. Baseball stars come from every avenue, and from the guys that are expected to be stars to the ones no one believed in, but somehow far exceeded expectations. And this is a book of those who exceeded expectations.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's exciting to see your perspective from the scout perspective in terms of what a scout is looking for in terms of who could potentially make a great ball player. From your research, what is it that you see that's inherent within those players that are going to make it?
I mean, it's such a subjective and individualized thing, and that's one of the things that makes each of these stories different. Is that each player had maybe some quality that only one scout saw. You may have 30 scouts at a game and have 30 different opinions. Mookie Betts, who's arguably one of the greatest players of his generation, there were a lot of scouts when he was in high school that people thought, oh, that swing's not going to work. He's not going to hit. And that happens with guys who are superstars. I was just talking to someone earlier today with the team about Max Scherzer, who's one of the greatest starting pitchers. And I had multiple scouts who were sure that he was going to end up a relief pitcher just because of his delivery and things like that. But, this book really looks at the sort of the scouting and discovering and then drafting and signing. The other side of it is the player development part and how they get from the point they're signed up to the big leagues. And that's probably the one thing that holds them all together. And there's not the right word for it. I think scouts use the term having the want to, because there are tons and tons of guys that you see come through professional baseball who are unbelievably talented, and they can really run, they're unbelievably strong, they can throw really hard, but it's what's between their ears and the desire that gets them to where they're going. Albert Pujols was in junior college. He was a 13th round draft pick. A lot of people didn't think he was really that good, but he had the desire to prove all those people wrong. So maybe it's that want to. Some of them have a chip on their shoulder because they didn't get taken when they feel they should have, and they use that as motivation to fuel them throughout what, at least for this book, guys who've gone on to have very successful and lengthy careers.
And hopefully success afterwards as well. You see too many sports figures who do really well while they're in the league, and then afterwards it's sort of like their life sort of falls apart because of the lack of maybe structure. You see that maybe more in the NFL, maybe in the NBA. I don't know if you see it as much in the MLB.
I'm sure it happens. Careers, I guess, probably if you make it, are longer. That's if you make it. I think it's 1% of all players who enter professional baseball. These are the ones who are good enough to actually start a pro career, make it to the major leagues. So all the rest of them end up going on to do other things. So I think there are varying levels of success. There are the in all sports, there are these guys who have these sort of big, public, famous flameouts. I think most of these guys, not that money can buy happiness, but most of these guys played long enough and were successful enough that they'll at least be comfortable. Finding what to do with their time is another thing. That's why you see a lot of them go into coaching. Albert Pujols, has gone into broadcasting. Ian Kinsler, who's in the book, is like an assistant to the GM for the Padres, or a special assistant, one of those kind of titles. So that a lot of times they need to sort of get back in to do that. You can go through if you feel like you're stuck there. You don't feel like you have to be stuck there. Okay, all right. I just saw them standing there like, you can't move. We're not holding anyone hostage here.
You may see a flash of tie-dye internet coming on the way through. Well, one of the exciting things is for those of you, those who do make it, when you talk with them, what is it like? Is it pure enthusiasm? Is it dread? Is it...
For me or for them?
For them.
All right. It's a former colleague of here. For them, I think it depends. The ones who do it right, some really enjoy the conversations. Some understand that we have a job to do, and then some dread it, and don't. And some don't like talking about themselves. Like in this book, Mookie Betts is a great personality. Probably all those who watch baseball see him on TV. He's kind of gregarious. He does not like to talk about himself. So I did not talk to him for the book. I saw him the other day. I gave him the book. He was thrilled. He didn't know the story about his scouting by the Red Sox, so he was excited. But he doesn't like to talk about himself. Jacob deGrom doesn't like to talk, period. Like he'll talk after he pitches. He does pitch occasionally, I promise you. But he just doesn't like to talk. So I didn't get a chance to actually speak with him either. So some of those guys, can be a little more difficult. I have the benefit because for the last 20 years, I only cover prospects. So by the time they're big league superstars and I see them, I don't need anything from them. So they're really friendly to me because I talked to them when they were 19 years old. And so I never have to ask them for anything, with the exception of lining up the interviews for this book. And with the exception of Ian Kinsler, I don't think I knew any of them before I started working on it. But, I can walk, into a spring training camp and see guys that I knew way back when. And so it's much friendlier, mostly because there's no professional transaction that needs to take place at that point.
And when you've helped grow them too, I mean, you've probably certainly given them, feedback in terms of interviews and what to say and what not to say, or would you do that as a journalist, kind of guiding them through their first few interviews?
Not as much now. I've found that, and my colleague Jim Callis, and he and I do all of our draft coverage together, have noticed that each year the high schoolers, the college players, certainly, but even the high schoolers, they are more and more polished. They don't need help. I will offer it. I have over time in case people want to practice interview in English or not sure what to say about a difficult topic. Or that sort of thing. Major League Baseball and the Players Association used to run this thing called the Rookie Career Development Program. They still do it, but it's just virtual now. And we would have a setup where we would do interviews with a bunch of people, and we would always offer to do sample interviews because that was part of they had media training during that. A lot of teams do their own media training, but I've found that even guys, from this last draft class, so the seniors in high school, are so put together and polished that I probably could learn more from them than the other way around.
Amazing. What do you think it is that is kind of changed and it maybe advanced the younger generation?
Probably the immediacy of social media more than anything else. I would say, they know that everything they say, if they're serious about where they're going to go, by and large, I'm painting with a broad brush here, but they know that people are going to hear and see what they say and do. And I don't know if high schools have upped their game in terms of media, TV, that kind of thing. I'm not sure. They all have agents, and maybe the agents provide some training. I think it's probably a combination of all those things, but I think it's really, so many of them already have a social media presence, so they're kind of doing it on their own. Now, that can get out of hand, as we've all seen, but the ones who do it right already have a sense of where they can go and show their personality and things like that.
Exactly, and how far to push and how far to
Right.
hold back, maybe some things that you wouldn't necessarily want to have leaked online or to go out there. So in terms of the of career advancement and having that want to, as you're describing it, were there any players here in this book that you feel like lost that want to?
No, otherwise they wouldn't be in the book. I mean,
Yeah.
It's that's this doesn't go into the sort of what happens once they sign with the team. That could be a whole different book in sort of the player development and the coaching that they get, and also the work that they put in. Like Jacob deGrom, for example, was a shortstop in college who barely pitched until his junior year. He didn't throw very hard. Kind of had to get forced into being a starting pitcher. The Mets take him and I've conflated all the facts, but 8th or 9th round, 9th round I think it was. And that summer he blew out his elbow and needed Tommy John surgery. Now, for a lot of guys, that would have been it. You would never heard from him again. This is a guy who was reluctant to be a pitcher, but he clearly kind of worked so hard at rehabbing and the rest of his body that by the time he came back fully healthy, he went from throwing 88 to 91 miles an hour to throwing 98 to 101 miles an hour. And then a year and a half later, he was in the big leagues. It kind of happened like that. You know, someone who does prospect rankings, I remember we barely got him on the Mets list. He was like low down because he was kind of old, because it took him a while to, it takes, you know, a year and change to come back. He didn't really pitch until almost 2 years after he got drafted. And then suddenly there he was, you know, winning the Rookie of the Year at a slightly older age for a Rookie of the Year winner. But so that's the kind of want to, you know, there are a lot of guys who could have been in the same position and been like, you know, like, is this really worth it? But, you know, he bought into the path that was given to him, and he took it.
That's fascinating. And, you know, just to know that they're able to kind of completely rehab themselves from
yeah,
some
obviously.
obviously help, absolutely. In terms of use of steroids and other kind of drugs, performance enhancement drugs in baseball, have we found that it's gone down over the years since kind of that big kind of 90s surge that maybe we saw with some certain hitters?
It's funny because my other book, which 4 people read, 3 of them in my family, was about Roger Clemens. And it was actually talking to hitters about the challenge of facing Roger Clemens. So the book stands up, except it was at the printer when the Mitchell report came out about steroid use, and he was like the star of the show. So that didn't go so well. But yeah, I mean, you're still hearing, you know, about players who are getting suspended, usually in the minor leagues, and usually not the top level guys. So either it has gone way down, and I think largely it is, or they have found something else that doesn't get caught by testing. But I think by and large, it is a cleaner sport than it was back at that time, where it felt like pretty much everybody was using something.
Well, and it's hard because you want to see people who naturally, you know, kind of hit these records versus, you know, using something that, you know, it may help bring numbers. It was an exciting season when, you know, we had some of these
McGuire and Sosa.
McGuire and Sosa, exactly. But, you know, when you get past that, then you're like, well, what about the people who've really worked hard?
Yeah, well, and if you talk to players from that era who didn't take anything, especially pitchers, they're not, they're upset. At the same time, you know, baseball is a weird sport, you know. So for me, using performance-enhancing drugs, it can make you stronger. It can help you recover faster, and I think that was the biggest thing that helped Roger Clemens. It does not make you recognize a curveball out of a pitcher's hand and keep your hands back long enough so you can hit it out, right? So I always felt like, yes, what Mark McGuire and Sammy Sosa did should have some sort of asterisk next to it, but you can't totally take away what they were able to do or what some of these other players were able to do. You know, the shame of it with like Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens, for me, is that they would have been Hall of Famers if they had never done anything, and then they felt the need. You know, if you believe the reports, Barry Bonds started doing that, watching the adulation for McGuire and Sosa,
right,
and how much everyone loved him. He forgot the part that you had to be, you know, not a jerk for people to like you.
You've got everywhere, no matter where you work, you've got people with egos of all sizes, right?
Well, he's you know, when you were asking me about people in terms of dealing with the media,
yeah,
it was if you got him on the right time, he's incredibly smart. If you've ever seen him in interviews, I mean, that's why, you know, oftentimes the most gifted players don't make good hitting coaches. He was an excellent hitting coach. Like, he was really, really smart. And if you got him at the right time, he was great. If you got him at the wrong time, you felt like you were this big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, other than dealing with some of these maybe big personalities and big egos, what is it that for you was a passion in becoming a baseball journalist, and B, you know, wanting to clearly you've had a long career doing this. You know, what helps you keep the love of the game going?
I mean, it's hard because, like with any job, jobs get wearing, even if you love it, right? So we've all had those things. It starts with that, the love of the game. I mean, I played in high school. I realized pretty early on that it wasn't going to go beyond that, and some of it is just good fortune. I could have ended up covering another sport and probably would have been happy about it. Just the fact that this was the sport that meant the most to me, and I get to cover it, sort of, has combined in a sort of the stars were aligned kind of way. And, I've been lucky enough I'm about to hit 25 years at MLB.com, which is crazy when I say it out loud. And, I've changed what I've done every so often. So the challenge remains, having just covered prospects for the last 20 years now, I love being able to bring stories to people that they haven't heard before. Now, there's a huge proliferation of prospect coverage now, so people can get a lot more information. But by and large, the things that we get to do, that I get to do, I'm introducing people to these players in a lot of ways. And I like kind of being that first stop for a lot of them. And so I end up, talking to someone, and he may be a really, really good talker, and then you just have to hope he's good at baseball, because there have been times where I'm like, God, he's such a great interview. They're going to love him when he gets to whatever the major league market is, and they never quite make it. And like, man, they missed out, right? Because baseball's hard, but it's really the storytelling. Getting back to that, and I think that's probably why I've always been so in sync with the scouting industry, because of their ability to tell stories about how they keep the game going.
And it's just so much fun. Each and every year, there's some sort of story. There's some sort of drama. We get to see teams that have lost year in and year out finally make it. This year, I know here in town, one of the big conversations is whether or not the Diamondbacks will be getting a new stadium. I mean, we built a stadium 20 years ago, and they're wanting a new stadium. So...
our bosses aren't going to see this, right? There hasn't been talk of a new stadium in Pittsburgh. There's been more talk about renovations. But I mean, listen, the Texas Rangers already built a new ballpark. I never made it to the other one. I'm like, wait, Atlanta? Mm-hmm. It's just like it's happening so fast. I'm like, I don't totally understand, the need to do that so rapidly. I know things when it's, state of the art. I think it's kind of like houses. Like, I live in Pittsburgh. My house was built in 1900. It's got these great bones. And then you have, a house that was built in 1980 and it falls apart 20 years later. Mm-hmm. So like Fenway, the ballpark here, I mean, I think there's a parallel there. So, I haven't been to the ballpark here in quite some time. Mm-hmm. It seemed fine to me. I don't see the need to. The bases are still 90 feet apart, right? Like, I don't see the need for that. And then you get into the whole mess of, well, who's paying for it, right? Yep. And then that can get very, very ugly. There are people still upset in Pittsburgh because they use public funding, so like taxpayers paid for that ballpark and didn't reap the benefits of it really. You could make some argument about the indirect impact of local economy and things like that, but I don't know. Maybe I'm fortunate because of the things that I tend to cover. I don't have to worry about the big business side of it as much, even though the draft picks and the young guys get huge bonuses and things like that.
It is a big part of the business, though, but to me, it's one of the best parts to watch. I mean, I love watching, for instance, the NFL draft each and every year, because you get to see young people coming up and getting recognized for some of their work and their hard work that they've done. And I would assume that's the same with the MLB as well, to see these people coming on up and maybe, I don't know, that spark of youth.
Yeah, I mean, and that gets back to me introducing, because the players to people, because I do the baseball draft, and it's the NFL draft. It's fascinating, but everyone knows the players already, and it's become a whole spectacle. It's like a year-round industry, additionally, those players go right into starting lineups for teams that are, playing in the NFL on national TV. Baseball, like, no one knows the high school players. Now maybe they check, on our site and other sites that cover the draft to see who the names are, but you haven't seen them. Maybe you watch a little video if you're really, really into it. College baseball, there's a lot more of it on TV, but it's not even close to college football. And then those guys disappear for, however many years in the minor leagues before they make it up to the big leagues, unless you play for the Angels. In that case, you're in the big leagues 10 minutes later. But but so that the combination of those things makes it a little bit, more of a leap. I've been a part of the baseball draft being on TV since it started doing that, and it's a hard sell. It's not everyone gets it. But again, that's part of what I love the most is sort of letting people know about, like, hey, here's this, high school kid from Indiana who ended up, going number 3 in last year's draft, say, and Max Clark, that people wouldn't necessarily have known who he was if it weren't for the coverage we're able to provide.
In terms of continuation of the MLB, I mean, it's still going really, really strong, and it's fascinating the amount of business behind it. I keep on thinking back of the movie Moneyball when I was reading your book a little bit and getting kind of that idea, that kind of background idea that Michael Lewis gave us within baseball and within sports and bringing in these players. And I sort of got that feeling reading your book as well.
It's kind of different branches from the same tree. At least that's how I look at it. If you ever told me that Moneyball was going to be turned into a movie, I never would have believed you. It still kind of boggles my mind. But that was really the sort of beginning of the shift towards looking at data and statistics and information to evaluate the game. And these stories, by and large, are really the more sort of old-fashioned evaluating and scouting players. Now, for me, the teams and the executives that do it right don't look at it as this schism. It's a hybrid approach, and you have a whole toolbox, and the people that leave one or the other tool in the box are doing their organization a disservice. The old school scouts are like, I don't care about the numbers. If they're the decision makers, then you're missing out on how the game is played now. For better or for worse, it's how the game is played. But then there are the teams and the executives who go so far in the other direction that you might as well play a video game or Stratomatic, or play the game on a spreadsheet, because you're only looking at the numbers. There's the famous line in Moneyball where Billy Beane repeatedly says, "We're not selling jeans here," for a guy they drafted who never made it to the big leagues, by the way. So, but it's the teams that combine those approaches and use every way of evaluating players and acquiring players. Those are the ones that have teams that have prolonged success, and it's hard to do it over and over again.
Exactly. It really is. And, we see teams like, the Yankees, as much as you get a little tired of them, continuing to do well for the most part year in and year out. It ends up becoming a joke, as you see these teams kind of extend over the years.
Well, I mean that was kind of what was great about last year's World Series.
Yeah.
Right. Not that, listen, the Texas Rangers spent a lot of money. This wasn't like
They
some
did.
small market team.
No.
This is a large market here, but they were different teams. And the Yankees, they haven't won a whole lot. Won one.
Mm-hmm.
What the Dodgers did this offseason is bonkers, just because they signed everybody. But but then the thing is, on paper, yes, that team's going to be really, really good. But you don't know until you go out and play. I don't think anyone thought the Diamondbacks would be in the World Series. If we were here last year and you asked me make World Series predictions, I probably wouldn't have picked either of the teams, but I certainly wouldn't have picked the Diamondbacks. Don't ask me to make World Series predictions.
I won't. But that's part of the fun of the game too, is that baseball continues to surprise us, and teams continue to surprise us, and that's part of the fun of watching each and every year.
Yeah, I think that's true of all sports, but particularly baseball. I think the season is so long and there are so many games and so many things have to go right or wrong. And I think if you were to really sort of dial down into what the Diamondbacks did last year, if one thing had gone the wrong way, they probably would have been done. It's just everything kind of lined up, and that sometimes you have those kinds of magical seasons. It's such a hard game that I think it is rarer in baseball than in other sports where what you think should happen on paper actually happens once you're playing the game.
Well, we usually see, football players out by 36, 34. Baseball, I'm surprised based off of the number of games that they'd play. I would have assumed that the average age out would be about that, but we still continue to see players well into their 40s in a lot of respects.
Yeah, I think those are outliers. I mean, the average NFL career is 3 years? So they're usually done much sooner than that. Some of the superstar quarterbacks, probably the ones that play into their 30s in the NFL. In baseball, it's obviously not as brutal a game as football, so there's a better chance for you to play longer. I would think. Obviously there are all sorts of injuries that can make things go right. And like I said, so many players who never make it to the major leagues, and many of those are because injuries trip them up.
Yeah.
The ability to recover from things is greater than it ever was, like it's true in all the sports, but it's not a contact sport in that way. So I think one of the things that a lot of sort of casual fans don't recognize is how much work these guys do. It used to be way back when, like way back when, even before my time. Don't say anything. That guys would show up to spring training to get into shape.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you show up spring training out of shape, you're in trouble, and it's news. Like, oh, this guy showed up and he's not ready to go. Like, it is a year-round thing because it is such a grind of a game, and they're all such physical specimens now. I think that the other difference is that it used to be you used to have a lot of guys who were kind of non-athletic who could play baseball, and I think those numbers of those kinds of players have dwindled considerably because you're just not going to last, and there's going to be some better, stronger, faster version of what you can do ready to take over.
I mean, it's almost laughable when you think of the very early days of baseball, then you think of like Babe Ruth, who smoked cigars and drank like a fish, was pretty out of weight. He could hit a ball.
He could run. I mean, the thing that people don't realize, but he's, he was probably an outlier also. Like,
right.
Now, had he been born into this generation, he probably would have had like a trainer and a strength and conditioning coach, and instead of going down to Cuba for a month and a half to get ready for the season. So, I think he's an anomaly. But yeah, it's obviously a much, much different game.
So why spring training? Why do you think spring training is so important to baseball?
Well, I mean, I think there's the practical part of it, right? That it's an outdoor sport. It's going to start in April. It's been starting in April forever, so you need that time to get ready. You can be in shape, but you need to get a certain amount of at-bats, a certain amount of innings on the mound, a certain amount of ground balls to be ready to play at the speed that they play a regular season major league game. So it's no longer like, oh, I need to get myself into shape. From a conditioning standpoint, it's like I need to get myself into like baseball shape. So I'm ready to see a 98-mile-an-hour fastball on the outside corner, or I'm ready to go dig out a ball in the hole at shortstop and make the throw. Those are things that you can't really do on your own. You can go take ground balls, but it's not the same thing. So these spring training games, even if you only see the starters play 4 or 5 innings at the start, they're easing into being able to play 150 of them, at a level that all of us could only dream of.
It's incredible. I mean, I remember going to a game and seeing Randy Johnson pitch, and boy, that was wild.
Scary.
It was scary, but it was amazing. Would you like to read a little bit from your book?
I thought I might.
Right.
I was going to read the introduction, so you can skip that. But it gives if you're on the fence, like, I don't know if I want to buy this book, it gives a sense of kind of where this, this came from and why I did it. In my early days of covering the draft for MLB.com, I was fortunate enough to see and talk to some future first-round picks. In 2004, I spent a lot of time in my hometown of Pittsburgh with Neil Walker, who went on to have a solid big league career. I also traveled to Virginia to see a pair of top college pitching prospects face each other. One of them, Justin Verlander, is headed to the Hall of Fame. The other, Justin Orenduff, never made it to the big leagues because of injuries. A year prior, I drove to eastern Pennsylvania to see a high school outfielder who hit several homers in a doubleheader, ended up being the number 5 overall pick in the 2003 draft. Chris Labansky made it as high as AAA and was out of baseball after the 2011 season. I bring these examples up not to criticize misses, but rather to show how hard it is to evaluate amateur players and project who is going to be a big leaguer, let alone a star. Scouts are the foundation of baseball, and it is grossly underestimated just how hard they work and how inexact a science it is to find the national pastime's future. It's often our storytellers who are the true bedrock of our society, and that's definitely true in the baseball ecosystem. No one spins a yarn as well as a scout, and not in a look at how great I am way. Sure, any scout will proudly talk about successes, but nearly everyone I've talked to has been just as likely to wax eloquent on the ones who got away or the ones they got wrong. And when given the chance to do a little self-promotion, scouts won't typically go to the first rounders they signed, though they're no doubt proud of them. Instead, they'll puff their chests out more about the guy they got in the 8th round or the 17th round or beyond. Why? Because in those cases, it was their belief in a player, more than anyone else's, that got that player drafted and gave him the chance to show what he could do in pro ball. As the draft wears on, decisions fall to the area scouts, the people who cover each region of the map and are responsible for sending in reports on players worthy of consideration. The general manager might see potential first-round picks, the scouting director might only have time to see players in the first several rounds, and even the national and regional cross-checkers only have so many days to see as many players as possible. Even if they got to see a late-round candidate, it's often the conviction of the area scout that is the deciding factor. And that's what this book is about. Those stories of later-round selections who take the opportunity given to them, run with it, and far exceed the expectations of someone taken deep in the draft. The players obviously deserve a ton of credit for the work they put in to become major league stars, and their voices are reflected in each chapter. But these are really origin stories I wanted to tell, shining a spotlight on the tireless and often thankless efforts of the scouts that continue to build this game we love so much. I conducted dozens of interviews with these architects and gave them the floor, allowing them to tell their stories about some of their favorite finds. In each case, I afforded the scouts responsible for the discoveries of these stars the opportunity to shout from the rooftops that they knew all along that their guy would be a Cy Young winner, an MVP, an All-Star, a future Hall of Famer. But they're all too smart and know this game is far too humbling. Nary a one took the bait. They might take credit for seeing something that others didn't, but none of them would claim being the Nostradamus of the scouting industry. So while their humility stands out, I'll be the one to trumpet these accomplishments, while certainly not underselling the work ethics of the players' accomplishments on the field. The scouts responsible for signing each subject in this book all saw something that others didn't see. Perhaps there was some luck working in their favor, but as the saying goes, luck is a matter of preparation meeting opportunity. That 2003 draft where Chris Labansky went number 5 overall, the career leader in wins above replacement from that class was taken in round 17. And yes, he's in the book. Justin Verlander tops the 2004 draft war list, but 4th on that list is another 17th rounder, also in the book. You'll find a 13th round selection headed to the Hall of Fame in this book. A 5th rounder who leads his draft class in wins above replacement, has an MVP award and 2 World Series rings. A 9th round pick who used to be a shortstop and has gone on to win 2 Cy Young awards. A soft-tossing college performer taken in the 4th round who leads his class in WAR through the 2022 season and has a Cy Young award on his shelf. And 2 surprise second-round picks, one a Canadian high schooler who was second among all 2002 draftees in wins above replacement, the other a college senior who didn't hit until his final year at that level and has gone on to win a batting title and 2 Silver Slugger awards. There are more success stories than could possibly fit into one book. Sequel, anyone? The moral of the story? Pay attention to the draft beyond the first round. And if you meet a scout, thank him for all he's done to ensure the continuation of our national pastime.
Fantastic. Thank you. So I've got to ask you, is there going to be a sequel following up on some stories?
I can neither confirm nor deny. I would love to maybe at some point. I have another book project that I may be working on that's not as sort of scout and baseball heavy related, but I think eventually I will get back to telling some of these stories.
It's kind of fun. Sports writer Mike Lupica ended up writing some Robert B. Parker mystery novels.
I will never write a mystery novel. That was the original question.
I was
That will
gonna.
never happen.
I was gonna. Well, it is a. You're here at the Poison Pen, so I might as well ask if there might be some dead bodies in your future.
I don't think I should answer that question. Yeah, I know. I remember when he wrote some of those books. I've tried once or twice trying to write fiction, and it's just the writing the dialogue part just I couldn't do. So I'm gonna stick to telling other people's stories in real life.
Well, I loved how easily and quick this book is to read. I mean, it's such an enjoyable book from beginning to end. Each chapter is just so fascinating because each person that you've selected is so individual to the book and to their own story. I just found it was just fascinating and super easy and super fun to read. It was just, you don't always get that with nonfiction works. And I thought you just really hit it out of the park. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. I'd like to open up some
Please.
questions to the audience. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about the life of a scout. I mean, with all the travel, the small ballparks. I mean, you're married, and back in the day when you were out and about like that.
So I've never been a scout. Let me make that clear.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, I've probably talked to enough where I can sort of speak on behalf of that. And a lot of it depends on where you are sort of on the scouting chain, and if you're an area scout, it depends on the size of your area. The amount of miles that you put in a car, I don't understand. I'll sum it up like that. I think one of the best stories I ever heard was from a scouting director, and in the middle of draft season especially, they're bouncing around. They don't stay in one place for more than a day unless there's like a conference tournament or something like that. And he would, before he went to sleep, in his hotel, write down the city he was in. Because you're in Marriott's or name your chain that you want to get the points for, and would constantly wake up in the middle of the night and not know where he was because it was the same place as he was yesterday and the same place he's going to be tomorrow. I've been in enough of those rooms that are then designed backwards, and I've walked into walls before. So but that to me is sort of says the tireless dedication that they have to the game. That just it sounds glamorous, but and then again, it depends on the area you are. Sure, if you're a Florida area scout, it's great when you can Tampa or you're here and you're right around here. But then when you got to drive to I know area scouts here who also have to cover Colorado because that's right there. But that's that's what they do, and it's not for glory or for fortune. I can assure you that.
How has the globalization of Major League Baseball affected what you do in identifying prospects?
It's made it harder. I mean, I think it's fantastic. And a while ago, I sort of made the determination that there was no way that I could be the one to cover, all of that. Now, once they're in minor league systems, yes, that sort of falls, in my bailiwick more. But they're and even within major league teams, they're different scouting departments. There's international scouts, Latin American scouts, scouts all around the world. So, and when I first was even looking at this book, there were a couple of stories on the international side that I was thinking about. Ronald Acuna was one that sort of close, but I didn't even know enough people to talk to figure out the best way to do that. And I figured, I'm gonna leave that alone. Someone else can write that book maybe. But yeah, it's obviously, the more the game grows, I think it's great, but it does make it a little more difficult to figure out. And even now, we're putting out our top 30 prospect lists, and we're folding in the Latin American kids who just signed in January, and they're 16. It's hard enough for me to put them on a list that people are going to forget a month from now. I don't know the people who have to decide, I'm going to give this 16-year-old $4 million because I think he's going to become superstar X. Do you remember when you were 16 and where you were when you were 21 or 25? That's crazy to me. It's hard enough high school and college guys, but But that's a whole different. I have so much respect and admiration, and yet some of the greatest stars we've ever seen have come from those markets. But so many of those guys just don't make it because you don't know how they're going to mature. The transition from other cultures to here is exceedingly difficult. So that is a tough job. Am I calling on people or you?
Oh, it doesn't matter.
All right.
Can you explain how the system of ranking prospects works? And then, secondly, you have a huge universe of people you're looking for all over the place. They're unknowns. How do you know when to jump in the car and drive to Erie, Pennsylvania and look at a prospect? How do you find out?
Luckily, Erie's not that far. That's a bad example. My confession is I don't have nearly enough time to go out. Every year I'm like, I'm going to see more players. I want to go out. I don't have time. So I'm relying on the scouts who go and do that. But let me back up and answer your first question. I think a lot of people do it differently. There are people who rank prospects who they go out and they evaluate, and it's what they see. Keith Law at The Athletic, Eric Longenhagen at Fangraphs. Those are guys they like to go out and kind of do it based on what they see. Now, I've seen enough baseball where I have a sense, but I would much rather talk to the people whose job it is to see a guy over and over again than what I'm going to do based on one look. So I'm more sort of an aggregator. So I'll give you, for a top 30 list, I'll give you sort of just boil it down. I'll usually start, and this is a top 30 list of minor league players within an organization already. Not the draft is a whole different thing. And I'll put together a draft of a list to start with. And I usually start with the director of player development, the farm director, the guy who oversees the entire minor league organization, to go through the order, to take notes on guys, what they think. Now, you can't just do based on not even one person within the organization, because even within an organization, you're going to have differing opinions. So then you'll try to talk to some minor league coaches or some other people, some scouting directors, the guys who signed them to begin with, and get their opinions on the order. And then you have to flip it around and talk to people outside of the organization, because obviously within your own organization, you're going to be like, I love this guy. And then you're going to talk to two external scouts who are like, that guy can't play. So then you have to try to find a kind of a balance between that. And it's always, listen, it's scouting is an inexact science. This is an inexact science. And I've had scouts tell me, like, man, I don't know how you do your job. I'm like, I don't have to write a 7-figure check to any of these people, so I'm good. But that's sort of in a nutshell how we do it. And then there are people within our department. We split up the teams and we kind of run the lists by each other for feedback that way. Yep. And then there.
Turn on that question about the life of a scout and talk a little bit about the life of a beat reporter, how that's changed. It used to be you're writing a game story, you'd be writing it in pieces, and maybe now you're just tweeting it out or passing it out. I don't know.
I've never been a beat reporter. You want to answer this one? No? Jesse Sanchez from MLB.com. He used to cover the Texas Rangers, and when I mentioned I don't do the international scout, that's him, or was anyway. So, obviously it's different. Like these days, you can't become a beat writer without knowing how to shoot and maybe edit video. You can't write long form things because people's attention spans are so short. Every once in a while we get to really dig in and tell stories, but even from the beat writer standpoint, I think there is that constant churning of quick content. For me, I understand you want people to have eyeballs on the site, but I don't love clickbait. I think there's a way to do both. And the other thing that probably the biggest thing that's changed is that the vast majority of people get their information from this, right? They're certainly not reading newspapers, right? But they're definitely not even looking on their desktops so much. It's all this, right? So you need to sort of find ways to present content that people can digest this way. And I don't know about you, but I've tried to read long feature stories on my phone, and I have a hard time with it. And it's something I want to read, but it's just, right? So I think it's all whittled down to this generation of I think it's great because you can have instant information, but the downfall is you can't take the time to craft stories in the same way.
Do scouts
Do scouts specialize in terms of like?
Pitchers versus positional players.
Well, I think that's interesting. I think so. Not right out of the gate. I think a lot of teams now do have sort of higher level people who will focus on on pitchers, especially for like the draft. Then maybe they'll do other things, right? It's not that they're just doing that, but when you first start out, if you're an area scout, you're scouting all of it. But I do think that there are a lot of teams that now have people who will go and like, all right, here are 3-4 pitchers that we want to take in the first round. We're going to send our pitching guy in, and sometimes he's maybe he's the pitching coordinator, and that you send him out because you want him to look at it. But and I think just like any human who does anything, they might be better at one thing than the other. I was in Giants camp today. I was talking to their farm director, and for years Dick Tidrow was kind of like the backbone of scouting, right? If he saw a pitcher, you wanted to pay attention, and he could fix pitchers. Like I had this very conversation today. Like he would take a guy and be like, "Oh, I know what to do with this guy," and you're not always right. He told the story about he tried to fix Madison Bumgarner, and after a start, Madison Bumgarner's like, "That's not working. I got to go back to me." And to his credit, Dick Tidrow said, "Yep, go ahead." Right? He wasn't so rigid. But Dick Tidrow wasn't as good at scouting hitters because he was a pitcher, right? So I think everyone might have a specialty. That's when, to me, the scouts that are able to do like all of it and are good at finding all of that's amazing to me because, especially if they were ones who played one way or the other, I think it was only natural to think, well, Dick Tidrow had an expertise in pitching because he pitched, right? So, but I think that there's been some specialization, like I said, but by and large, the scouts are still asked this Herculean task of seeing all players at all positions. Yeah.
I want to talk about the influence of agents. I'm going to use an example.
Okay.
Detroit Tiger came up through the system. Brandon Inge, and he was a catcher. Tigers moved him to third, and Inge told me this, so this is not something I made up. The agent said, third base is a power position, and you have not been a home run hitter. If you're going to succeed, you got to hit the long ball. And by golly, one year he hit the long ball pretty good, and he got selected to be in the home run competition. He didn't hit one out of the park.
Right. So if that is your concern about the influence of agents in the game, there are a lot more things we could talk about than just them talking to a player about trying to sell out for power. I tend to be a pro player person, right? So I don't begrudge them for making their money, especially when you look at how much money the owners have. That being said, there are some agents who hold the game hostage, and they do the game a disservice. That story, Brandon Inge could have gotten that advice from a coach just as well as he might have gotten it from from his agent. I mean, it's a shame that happened. I remember when Brandon came up, but I think it's there are a select number of agents who wield so much power over who goes where and who makes how much.
When we get a break, you write down the name of one of them, and I'll write down. I bet we have the same one.
I mean, I don't. There knows it's Scott Boras. We don't have to. I'm not afraid to name names. It's I mean, look at what's happened. You're right. Matt Chapman I get guys signing right now, which is crazy. And we were talking about today. Like some people are like, oh, people are gonna start rebelling. I'm like, they're not, right? Because he gets the players their money, and the owners have the money, right? It's like that's not the issue. I think it's the way it's gone about it and how. Him in particular, but it's not just him. There are a lot of agents who wield a lot of power, and there's been some agencies that have come together to form kind of super agencies, it's sort of like monopolies in other businesses, that I do worry a little bit about when this sort of financial piece takes over from the talking about just playing the game and who's going to win and things like that.
Scouting has been the backbone, you said,
since talking to people who involved in the game that scouting is being done away with by baseball. And baseball used to have a scouting school, but if I'm correct on this, you can verify they no longer have that.
They have versions of it, but it's not quite the same thing that you're referring to. You're not wrong. I don't think it's across all 30 teams, and I think it's in varying degrees. And it's very troubling to me, obviously. I mean, I think you can tell by now, if you didn't know coming in, where I stand on this. And like I said before, you need to use all the tools. And I think that the industry is going to look back and regret having moved, if they continue to move, as some organizations have, so far away from the need for scouts, or consolidating how many scouts you need. The pandemic, I think, really hurt the scouting industry, because suddenly there was this, we can just do this over video. We can just watch video. Watching video doesn't really tell you how someone carries themselves. You talk about the want to that I talked about. You can't get that from watching video. Sure, you might be able to break down a swing or or a delivery and things like that, but you can't. I mean, the scouts, like, I love hearing stories from scouts where they show up early and watch how a guy gets on and off the bus. Mookie Betts, the area scout who drafted him, Danny Watkins, one of the finest area scouts in baseball, went and watched him play basketball repeatedly. Can't do that watching video, right? Like, so things like that, when you get to know what makes a player tick, you get to know the family, so you know what you're getting, because you're not just getting what he can do on the field, right? You're getting all the other things. So a move away from that is doing the game a disservice.
Can I ask you a follow-up?
Sure.
I can't
You're next.
believe MLB TV has been around for as long as it has been either. I remember when it started. But the draft is something that I really enjoy watching. And as a Cleveland fan, we're sitting here with the number 1 pick.
Yep.
So you're already doing, I trust, putting stuff together, because I'm seeing the list, that people put out, projecting the mock drafts. What do you think, pitcher or an outfielder?
There is not a pitcher who will go number 1 in this year's draft. Well, there's one pitcher who might sneak up to there, Chase Burns from Wake Forest, but I don't think he's going to throw enough strikes to really sit in that spot. I haven't dug that much into drafts, so we usually have to get through all this in spring training, and then we'll kind of flip the page, and I'll start focusing more on that. There are a lot of college hitters, which the Guardians seem to like. Guys can hit. Travis Bazzana is the second baseman. I mean, it's weird. It's like second baseman and first baseman. It's not your usual top of the draft profile kind of guys. He's off to a ridiculous start. At a certain point in time, you don't care what position he plays if you think, all right, he's going to hit like that. The one other name, like if you're looking for that sort of what you think of the number 1 pick, like super toolsy, is a high schooler, Connor Griffin, whose name I'm hearing like he's gotten off to a really, really good start. Center fielder, like super toolsy. He probably has the best tools of anybody in the class, but he started a little bit lower down, high schooler. So then it's going to become the decision, as it often is, do you take that guy with a super, super high ceiling, or do you take the guy who, like, you're pretty sure Travis Bazzana is going to be a big leaguer, right? I mean, I should say that with an asterisk, because the amount of times I've said that and we're wrong, but there's that sort of high floor, like, I'm pretty sure he's going to hit in the big leagues. He'll be okay at second base, he'll be fine. That doesn't scream number 1 pick to you. Connor Griffin kind of more looks the part. Back there? Yeah.
Is there a favorite chapter, story, player in your book for you?
Yeah, that's like asking me who my favorite kid is. Neither of them are here, so I could tell you they're not here. They may be watching, so I'm not going to say. Each story has its own qualities. I think for me, the one that sort of jumps out when people ask me that is on Lorenzo Cain. People remember Lorenzo Cain, ALCS MVP, Gold Gloves, really good career. Lorenzo Cain did not play an inning. I don't want to give away too much. he'd not played an inning of baseball in his life until his sophomore year of high school. And it was only because he got cut from his basketball team, which is crazy to me because he went to a small high school. I don't care if he couldn't shoot a lick. We saw him scale fences. I'm like, how does that not make your basketball team? Like even a JV team. So evidently his basketball coaches are very good-natured about it. Had he made the basketball team, we would never have seen Lorenzo Cain play baseball. And like the stories, they seem like they're made up, like, but they're not. Like he went out the first time and put the glove on his wrong hand. Right? When you're a kid, like a little kid, right, and you don't know, but you know you're left-handed, right? The inclination is, oh, I'm left-handed. I'll put the glove on my left hand. So that's what he did. It took him a few shagging a couple flies. Like that's not going to work. And it's just one thing. And he went to junior college. The Brewers took him late, and it was it was called a draft and follow, so they could send him to junior college, and watch how he did. And he was terrible. He almost got benched, but by the end, he was the best player in that conference, and they signed him. And then he went to like rookie ball and won MVP of that league. I mean, it was like from not having played baseball to succeeding in professional baseball. To me, that's the like one that should be made into a Disney movie kind of story more than any other. Yep.
I want your thoughts on specialization in the sport, especially like high school and even younger. So, for instance, Joe Mauer, when he was elected to Hall of Fame, they asked him, "What do you think helped get you here?" And he talked about he played football and basketball in high school, and he was a top player in football. Bobby Bowden had recruited him for Florida State.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and playing those three sports. When I was growing up, a lot of players played two sports. Now it's so specialized. Is that to the detriment?
Are you asking for my personal opinion?
Yeah.
I think the specialization is terrible. I think that kids should play as many sports as they can for as long as they can. Now, sometimes you're just good at one sport. Like my son was lucky enough he played college ball. He played Division III college ball. The other sports just weren't for him, and we figured that out. But we tried the other things. You have to try it out. But I think that it's this weird thing where you almost have to specialize to get noticed and get ahead. And then baseball decries the fact that the best athletes aren't coming to baseball. So like, well, if you want to get the best athletes, then you should keep playing. And I remember talking to, you guys remember Amir Garrett? He pitched for the Reds. I think he's still playing? Anybody? Yeah? I think he's still playing. If you're left-handed and throw 95, you're still playing somewhere. But someone had given him the advice that you play as long as all the sports for as long as you can until someone offers you a scholarship or money to play one. And that's kind of what he did. He didn't play. He could probably be in this book, like the next volume, because he didn't play baseball. And then he started throwing like bullpens. He was getting ready to, play college basketball, and he did that. But I always liked that. Like, just keep playing. The vast majority of kids aren't going to get a scholarship or a professional contract, right? So, but keep playing for as long as you can. And I think the well-roundedness of playing multiple sports is something that is, unfortunately, a little bit of a dinosaur. Like I said, Mookie Betts. Mookie Betts, you get the sense that he could play any sport and would have excelled, right? He's like, he could go on the Pro Bowlers Tour tomorrow and be outstanding. And he was a very good basketball player. And so, I think there's time for them to specialize once they're asked to do it. And you see the guys take a big step forward once they give up one sport, or maybe they both pitched and hit, and then they end up focusing on the one, and they take a leap forward because then. But I don't think you should focus on it until you kind of have to. You want to take one more?
Yeah, one more. And Jake, do we have any questions online?
Yeah, we got a couple.
We got a couple? Okay.
Okay.
Cool.
All right, why don't we go here, and then we'll take those.
So, while the past 20, 25 years, baseball has had more different champions than any of the other three sports, how does that still play into the fact that we have a ceiling, basically, before the luxury tax, but we don't have a floor on payrolls, so that some of the lower, smaller market teams have to at least spend a certain amount, which would then get them some of the younger players mixed in with their veterans? not like the system's totally broke, because we have more
Right, it's complicated, right?
different ones, but can you speak to that, Josh?
I mean, I think there should be a floor. I mean, I live in Pittsburgh. So, you know, and it's unfortunate, you know, when I talk to people on the baseball side of things, like it's hard, right? Because, you know, that's a situation where the owner's making money for not doing, you know, for not spending money. It's, you know, which is kind of the antithesis of what you think of in terms of, you know, an economic system. But, yeah, I don't know if you could ever get them to that point where they would do it, but I think it would raise the level of the game overall. You know, and maybe we'll look back and it will make no sense that we've had sort of this parity and all these different winners, while I think more teams have stepped up and decided we're going to spend money, you know, and that's been a good thing, and you see the results of that. And you know, by and large, you're going to make more money doing that. And it's short-sighted for those teams. But I also think it's like going back to the bygone era when it was more individual owners, and maybe they were like ridiculously rich, and this was like an ego trip, but they wanted to win, right? And they love baseball. Like, I think you got a lot of ownership groups now that don't care in either direction there.
And Jake, what questions do we have?
Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Yeah.
All right. This one's from Robin. What kind of mentoring do these young recruits get in regards to their personal finances or public behavior, if any?
I mean, I think it depends. You know, I think a lot of agencies now provide certainly the financial support. They either have someone in-house or they have, I guess I should be looking here because you're not Robin. You know, and then in terms of behavior, you know, that goes into, by the way, the scouting the whole person and not just the player, so you know what kind of human being you're getting. But then I think once they enter into an organization, I think there's a lot of programs in place where help people acclimate to being a professional athlete and sort of conducting your business as a public figure in a way that, you know, you're representing the organization, but you're also representing yourself. And you see people trip up all the time, but I think it's sort of twofold there. But I do think that, I mean, all these players who are any good have representation pretty early, and almost all of those agencies do provide some financial support. So there's I think there's a smaller likelihood of these stories of that you heard. It doesn't mean that it won't happen or doesn't happen, of guys like burning through their money because they don't know what they're doing. I think people are much more careful and there are guardrails.
As far as the kind of public image, how big does social media play into all that? Is that
it's everything?
It's everything, right?
I mean, what else is there now?
Yeah.
If you think about it, it's like, sure, you don't want to like go on television and be an idiot and, you know, drop F-bombs while on live TV and things like that. But nowadays, social media it's everything, and it's there's a permanence to it, because even if you delete things, if someone sees it once, you're in trouble. And you know, we've seen it happen in all walks of life across all sports, where people say or do from really damaging and harmful things to just stupid, you know. And the more I think that baseball as a whole and other sports, but since we're, you know, talking about baseball, like, can do to train people, even like the media training that they provide, I hope that involves social media now, because the regular media training now is almost, I don't say it's obsolete, but we're getting there.
Yeah. This one's from Renee. How many baseball games do you attend per season, do you think?
Not as many as you would think. As I said, like, I've talked to a lot of people, but I don't know how to answer that question, because it's like, I don't, you know, between when I do get to like a college or a high school game, spring training, Arizona Fall League, 50, maybe. I'll probably take the under if I were to bet against myself on that one. But like, I don't go as often as I would like. If I could be at a ballpark every day, I would.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So, usually about this time, Jonathan, the sudden comfort chairs that we put out for the audience become suddenly uncomfortable. About an hour is about all we can stand and sitting there. So, for those who are online, thank you so much for joining us. If you want a copy signed by Jonathan of Smart, Wrong, and Lucky, now's your opportunity to go ahead and order one. You can order it through poisonpen.com and you'll have his signature on it. For those of you who are watching, thank you so much. For those of you who are here, thank you so much for coming physically and supporting Jonathan and supporting the bookstore. We are a Times Reporting bookstore, so what we sell today here for his event goes towards his Times numbers, which is always very important. If you could please go ahead and pick up your chair, put it against the right-hand side of the wall, my right, your left, and you guys can get your book signed, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm going to go grab your
Terrific, thank you.
Bringing a Sharpie if you want.